In this video, I want to introduce a new transformation to you. We've looked at manipulating position, and we looked at manipulating scale in a previous video. So now we're going to look at adding rotation to the mix. So I'm going to create a new composition, and I'm going to call this EX2, because what we do in this video can then contribute later to our exercise that'll be due at the end of the lesson. So we'll call this one EX2. And I'm going to make sure that my my animation preset, resolution presets are something close to 1080 HDTV. 29.97 is fine. Any of these HDTV settings will work. I was previously working on a different animation, so that's why I had some custom settings there. So 1920, 1080, frame rate at 29.97 is fine. If you want to put this at 30, sometimes that just makes the frame math easier. That's okay. Duration of 10 seconds is all right, and background color of this kind of purple shade is fine for now. Maybe I'll make it just a little bit darker. I'll hit OK, and then I'll go ahead and just fit this to my screen so I get a good look at that. Next, I'm going to create some objects on our scene, or in our scene here, some solids, so that we can mess with and manipulate those a little bit. Bring this solid settings panel over, and I will call this first one block 1. And for the exercise, we're going to make two different blocks on screen, and they're going to kind of battle each other. So this will be the first of the two blocks. In this first block, I want to make a little bit larger. So I'm going to make this one 600 by 600. And it's going to be square in its kind of orientation ratio. And the color can be, let's make this one a little bit of bold color. So I'm going to make it kind of that magenta color. It might be a little bit too harsh, so we might change that in a moment. But we'll press OK. And now I have this nice big large block. So this is kind of we'll call this one kind of the bully block. This one's going to start our animation by making a real dramatic charge at the other block as a way to kind of get this battle going. So I've got that solid there. I'm going to add another solid just so that we have our two blocks set here. So I'm going to go Layer, New, Solid, or I can always hit Control Y. And this one will be block 2. And this one I will make 200 by 200. And the color on this one I'm going to make, let's make it something kind of like this green shade is fine. A little unassuming, nothing too bold. So this is our second block in our battle here. And this block is a little bit, a little bit of the David to the Goliath. So I've got my two blocks. Now, we've already discussed position and scale and using squash and stretch, and that's great understanding to have. But what we haven't done is we haven't done anything that kind of lends to that anticipation principle that we learned earlier in this lesson. So I'm going to introduce rotation as a way to create that anticipation. So if this big block on the left is going to charge at the small block on the right, is it just going to rocket, propel itself right across the screen? Probably not. It probably needs a little bit of like a wind up, like before a dancer would leap, they'd bend their legs. Before a golfer would swing, there's a backswing. A pitcher has to wind up, and my big bully Bronco here needs to wind up as well. So let's use rotation to make that happen. But first, I'm just going to do a position movement here of this block moving from the left to the right, and then I'll add that anticipation in afterward. So let's do that real quick. Press the P key for position. I'm going to turn on those keyframes. I am going to move ahead 1 second in my timeline, and then I'm going to drag my bully to the right. And it's going to clip over my green block, my mini block, for just the moment. We're going to animate this character first, and then this one will react later. So if I preview this, hitting spacebar, my block just shoots across the screen. It's actually quite slow. So let's speed that up a little bit. Drag my keyframe to the left, preview again, and it's a little bit better. So what we have is we have the block kind of just shooting across the screen, but we're lacking that anticipation. So I'm going to move my keyframes to the right to about 15 frames there, so half a second. And then having done that, it gives me 15 frames to create anticipation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift and hit the R key to bring up that rotation parameter. I don't have to hold shift. I can just press the R key and it will bring up that rotation parameter. But if I hold shift, if you remember, it keeps the other keyframes established, or it keeps the other keyframes visible rather. And I like that because then I can know how much time I have before that position animation takes over. So let's start adding these rotation keyframes by clicking the almighty stopwatch. That'll add that first keyframe, and then we can move ahead in time and we can rotate this as a way, think of it like a horse would rear its legs up before it attacks. We're going to use that logic or that kind of inspiration to create this motion. So this object is going to rotate backward first. We can do it two ways. We can use our numeric entry here and we can rotate this object using that input, or we can use our rotation tool found up here in our toolbar, or hit the W key, and then we can click and drag on this object to create that rotation effect. When we do that, we see that the rotation updates here as well. And we know that, and we've seen that with our position inputs, and we've seen it with our scale inputs and so forth. So now we have the wind up, and now we need the kind of wind down, for lack of a better word. So let's go ahead and wind this guy down back to 0. It's really tough using the rotation tool to get a perfect 0 input, so that's why I usually come down into the numeric panel and just type in the number 0. Values like 90 degrees and 180 degrees are similar, so I'll just usually just type those in. So now what happens is we actually have a little bit of wind up before that happens. But it's not quite good yet. The wind up is there, so we have some anticipation, but it's just not timed well to be convincing. So that'll be what we improve next. First, perhaps when the wind up occurs, the fact that it rotates on this one point is a little bit physically awkward. We would expect that this object would almost like rear up in the sky, you know, on these hind legs versus rotating under the ground. We'd also expect it to kind of pivot back here on this point. So let's kind of make an adjustment here that gives that illusion. And we'll find some tools later that can do it a little bit better. But for now, to focus on these first three transformations, we'll do it this way. So at the beginning, I'm going to create a keyframe for position. And when it kind of does this rear up, I'm going to move it back a little bit. That way it gives the impression that this guy is kind of rolling back on his feet. And if we want to, we can even lift it up slightly. So that way that back corner is kind of staying put. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and then go. Let's see how that looks. Nice. One more change I'll make is I want to make sure that the character is kind of coming down as the movement across the screen is occurring. So if you ever watch like a Western movie or something where the cowboy kind of kicks up the legs of the horse, they kind of do that and then start moving. You know, the horse doesn't come completely down and then they ride off because that's a little bit slow. So let's move this object, or rather we can delay the rotation coming down until, oops, not all of them, just select one keyframe, until we want to wait for that to come down until the movement starts to occur. So I just took that third keyframe. This is the one that tells the block to settle back down. And I just moved it to the right a little bit, and here's the result. A lot better, a lot better. Now it's still a little bit slow, and if you notice, we get a little bit of a dip right there before the movement happens. So we might need to adjust position just a little bit. now that the rotation is timed slightly different. So that way it keeps that back corner pretty much above ground until that animation happens. So let's take a look at this one more time. And I'm going to click off the block so that way this motion path is not visible. It can be distracting, so I just clicked off the block so that way it's not complicating our preview. Not bad. Might be a little bit slow, might need a little bit of finessing later on, but for the most part, it's an effective start to our animation, showing a little bit of that anticipation. We expect that this block is about to do something because of that kind of pre-animation of the kind of the rearing legs, and then the actual primary animation of the charge happens afterward. So that's the basics of rotation and implementing those keyframes. Some other things about the property that I want to outline is rotation happens as a function of degrees. That probably makes sense to you. But After Effects lists two numbers for rotation. So the first number is full revolutions. The second number is part of that revolution. So I'm going to show you just on my second block real quick. So I'm going to hit the R key and notice that we have the first number and the second number in that one as well. So if I turn on these keyframes and I go ahead 2 full seconds, if I move this to 90, this green block is going to make a quarter turn. That probably makes sense having seen what we did with the first block. Quarter turn over 2 seconds time. However, if I were to take that off and I were to just type the number 1 in that front value, that first value stands for 1 full rotation. So this is going to spin 360 degrees in that same 2 seconds time. Let's look. You can notice that it's spinning a full revolution in that time. So keep that understanding in mind when you're working through this. You can use these partial revolutions, full revolutions sometimes, and as you move this value up past 360, it is going to add to that first number. So it's counting a full revolution there. You can also type in higher numbers. So if I wanted this to revolve 2 full revolutions, I can type 720, and that adds to that main value. So just kind of keep those in mind. So you're kind of clicking on 2 different numbers here as far as the rotation keyframes are concerned. But that's pretty much it for rotation. And I'll go ahead and stop this video and we'll catch you in the next one.